Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the poker vlog, everybody. In this video, we're going to talk about the top 3 most important HUD stats you need to make the best decisions at the poker table. I made for you a PowerPoint, and we're going to be playing poker in the background to try to find some real examples to show you while we play. So sit back, relax, and let's have a good time. This very tight player actually pots the flop here, but we're just gonna let this hand go and just try to find a better situation. We're gonna call this 3-bet with ace-5 suited with a fish to my left that he's most likely gonna call. And we know he's a fish because it's super high VPIP. Borderline whalish. We're gonna give him the fish tag, this yellow tag. Okay. So, Agrinia, what are the top 3 most important HUD stats? All right, let me show you. So the top 3 most important HUD stats are the following, in my opinion. The VPIP, the one at Showdown, and the one when soft flop. I'm gonna go through each of these and tell you like what question they answer for you at the poker table, why they're important, and break down the stats into 3 different sections so you know how to classify your player type based on if it's above this number or below this number. And I'm going to show you guys how the stat makes you money. And finally, I'm going to show you how you can estimate these stats at the poker table in a live environment just by what the player shows up with. So let's get started. So the VPIP. Voluntarily put money in the pot. This answers the question, is this player loose or is this player tight? And this is very important because you want to know if this player is loose or tight, because typically tight is associated with a player that knows how to play the game. They know when to fold properly. They know that most of money in poker comes from the top 25% of hands. So a tight player is a player that knows how to play the game, they've experienced in the game, and they can only go into 2 brackets here. Sorry. They can only go into 1 bracket, which is good, tight. Good, tight. Sorry. No, they can go into 2 brackets based on Slansky's principles, which is good, tight, or bad, passive. There is no good, passive poker player. They're either good, tight, or bad passive. And when you know a player's tight, it helps you to just be able to classify them, because they can either go into good tight or bad tight, and it doesn't take that long to know which one they are. If they just fold for 4 hours straight, they're definitely bad tight, because or you would call it tight passive, but there aren't any good passive players, so they're just bad tight. And from there you can form an exploit. If they're just tight and folding, then you can be super aggressive against them and just have them fold out their hands and win the pot that way. And if you're good tight, then you can probably avoid them or play a GTO style against them and exploit them that way. So that's why it's important to know, like, okay, they're tight. Now, are they good tight or bad tight? Okay? And I like what Slansky did here, because the same principle also applies to aggression. Are they good aggressive or bad aggressive? Guess what? If you're good aggressive, you're just tight aggressive, right? Also known as the proper way to play poker. So you're just good aggressive. So that leaves only 1 category left, which is bad aggressive, right? So if you see a player who's aggressive, you're able to classify them into 2 types, good aggressive or bad aggressive. And it doesn't take long to know which one. If they 3-bet you and then show up on the river with Jack 4 suited, they're probably bad aggressive. And then you can make an exploit against them. 3-bet them more, right? Because they're showing up with so many hands. So let's look at what you should look for in VPIP, percentage-wise. If they're less than 20%, they are tight. Now, all you got to do is look at what cards they show up with and discover, oh, they're good tight or bad tight. And if they're bad tight, they're just bad passive. Okay? If it's less than 30 but greater than 20, that is a standard range, a profitable range, and you're probably dealing with a good aggressive player. Now, if it's over 30%, okay, we know that this player is aggressive. We look now from here, we look at the cards they show up with on the river. If it's some outlandish hands that are not mandatory raises, then we can classify them as bad aggressive. If they're playing if you see them show up the river with suited connectors, suited broadways, they're most likely good aggressive. Okay? And knowing these numbers actually does something else that really makes your game very profitable. It helps you know if you should barrel your opponent and when you should barrel your opponent, and when their range is wide enough to withstand a barrel or not wide enough to withstand a barrel. Okay? So if a player is playing too many hands, it's most likely that on most runouts, if you just barrel into them, they can't withstand that because their range isn't tight and strong enough. And so every time you make them fold from barreling because they can't withstand the weight of your bets, you make money. So a standard strong range is about the top 20 to 25% of hands. When a player is playing, 5 to 15% or more of those hands, every time you barrel, some of those extra hands above that 25% has to fold. So it makes barreling automatic profit against these players because their range simply is not condensed and strong enough to withstand barrels. Okay? Now, what does this look like in a live environment? A lot of these examples, you have to pay attention when you play poker. And so when you get to the river, you want to look at what cards your opponent is showing up with at what position. As you know, on the button, you can play the most amount of hands, but from the early positions, this is where I really want to pay attention. If a player raises from early position under the gun, and then he gets to the river, and then he turns over Jack 4 suited, okay? We know that Jack 4 is not a mandatory raise from under the gun. It's not a raise from under the gun, period. There is no circumstance when Jack 4 is a raise from under the gun. So now you have to correlate that. You got to correlate Jack 4 with a VPIP percentage. If aces is a top 0.9% of hands, all the composite of aces is top 0.9% of hands, then what percentage of hands does Jack 4 encapsulate? So if we expand to 2%, those are all the kings and all the aces. 3% is ace king and all the aces. 5% is is pocket queens and all the aces and up to aces and ace king. So how far do we have to expand the range, the percentile range, to encapsulate Jack 4 suited? We have to stretch the range to approximately 54% until we encapsulate Jack 4 suited. So that means when this player raises, he's raising 54% of hands. So his VPIP is 54 if we're doing this in a live environment. That's how I would do it. That's how I would approximate his VPIP. Now, so the reason we're able to approximate his VPIP there, just from the hands he shows up with, is because if he's playing Jack 4 suited from under gun, he's definitely playing Jack 5 suited, Jack 6 suited, Jack 7 suited, all the hands better than Jack 4 suited. So that's why we're able to confidently say, okay, his VPIP is 54% from under the gun. Okay? And that's how we do VPIP, and that's how we make money from it. Barrel your opponent. It helps us classify if our opponent is loose or tight. And if they're loose or tight, we're able to discover if they're good aggressive, bad aggressive, or just bad passive. Next up is 1 at Showdown. I love this stat because it answers this question. Where should I look for flaws in this player's game? Okay? If a player's 1 at Showdown is too high, that means they're getting to the river with too strong of a range. Okay? Oh, guys, we just flopped a top set here. in a multi-way pot. We are actually there's so many Broadway draws, two pair flop two pairs. We can actually just jam this and see what happens. Let me take it down. Okay, yeah. So this helps us identify flaws in our opponent's game. It helps us to identify if this player bluffing too much or bluffing not enough, and it helps us to discover. It helps us discover. It helps us discover. How do I say it? It helps us know that this player has clear flaws, and if we know our player has clear flaws, it allows us to now try to discover what they are. Okay, and it also helps us know how to play hands like ace king and ace queen in those 4-bet or 5-bet pots, because let's say you're pre-flop and under the gun raises, opens, and you have ace king and you 3-bet. They 4-bet you, okay? And you're considering, should I jam here, or should I call, or should I fold? If you saw that this player wins at Showdown 60% of the time, you should almost always fold ace king there. Why? Because going to Showdown, when you go all in, you go immediately to Showdown. And we know that when we get to Showdown, this player wins 60% of the time, which is way, 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 way too high. Okay? So it helps us to know what to do with hands like ace king. Like ace king will never be good on average, because this player wins at Showdown way too high, and by just calling us all in, we're going straight to the Showdown. So our ace king probably will not be good, and so we can then decide to call or fold. But when a player is willing to go all in here with such a high one at Showdown, then you should just fold ace king, and it's okay. It's a drawing hand, right? And okay, so let's say we're playing against a player who, we flopped a nut draw here. Call, and we turn the nuts. And we're gonna beat this player called Beat Nuts. And we get it. Alright, let's say the player's won a Showdown is greater than 60%. This means that this player is reaching to the Showdown with such a strong range every single time. Every time he turns his cards over. Every time he gets to the Showdown after he's been betting action on the pre-flop, the turn, or the pre-flop, the flop, or the turn, and he gets a Showdown, he's getting here with such a strong range that he wins over 60% of the time. This means that when we get to the river and this player bets, we should fold almost everything but the nuts, because he only is betting at the Showdown with hands that win over 60% of the time. Now, if the numbers is between 45 and 60%, this is the standard range right here, 45 to 60%. This player is fighting for pots. I mean, not fighting for pots. Is winning at Showdown, right? At a nice average range. He's coming to the Showdown with bluffs. He's coming there with value hands, but on average he's winning, and that is a standard range. Okay. Next up, what if it's less than? What if it's less than 45%? If it's less than 45%, this means that when this player reaches a Showdown, he's coming there with a lot of trash, or when he turns his hand over, it is trash and he loses. When it's below 45%, it's a player that is capable of bluffing on the river. All right, and it also is a player that you can get it all in with ace king, because that means he has 4-bet and 5-bet bluffs. Because when you go all in pre-flop, you go straight to the Showdown. And when you go straight to the Showdown, it contributes to his Showdown stats. So when his Showdown is less than 45%, that means he's not getting there with the nuts every time, and getting it in with ace king and sometimes ace queen based on other variables is profitable. So yeah, it helps you with tough river spots, you know, You have third nut flush. He's going all in. Fold it. He has it every time. And it helps us discover, can this player bluff? If it's over 60%, he's not bluffing you. That's a value bet, buddy. And if it's less than 45%, he has bluffs, and you can then, you know, bluff catch. Now, what does this look like in a live environment? Well, let's say this is the run out. Queen of hearts, 7 of clubs, ace of clubs, 4 of clubs, and jack of spades. You ask yourself on every run out versus the player, when we get to the river, what is the nuts? The nuts is the Broadway straight, which is king 10. Okay? King 10. And now you ask yourself, what are the mandatory bluffs on this run out? Okay? So if king 10 is the absolute nuts, then the bluffs on this run out is a variation of king 10. So the bluffs on this run out is going to be some of the kings blocking the straight and some of the tens blocking the straight. But mostly it's going to be tens because kings have too much showdown value to bluff on this run out, right? So some kings are going to bluff, the weakest kings are going to bluff, and all the tens are going to bluff on this run out. So if you see an opponent come to the river and they're not bluffing either the king or the 10 when they show over their hand, then you can assume that this player is not bluffing enough at showdown, and thus is one at showdown is low, right? So yeah, so that's one example. So basically what you got to do, right, you have to figure out, is this player missing mandatory bluffs on the river? On this run out, it's the king 10. King 10 is the nuts. We discovered that, okay, kings and tens is what makes the nuts. Is he bluffing with kings and tens on this river? If he's not, then he's not finding the mandatory bluffs. And it's the same process for any run out. You look at the run out, you ask yourself, what are the bluffs here? Oh, sorry, you ask yourself, what are the value hands here? And then you take the 0 equity blockers to those value hands, and then if they're not bluffing with those cards, then they're not bluffing enough. Okay? So for example, when it's a straight run out, you ask yourself, what is it? What 2 cards make the straight? And then if either of those cards is look at this. We have pocket jacks. This guy just jams it. 86% won at showdown. All right, he's a whale, but there's no reason to get involved here. We're gonna fold. He wins too much at showdown. It's only been 46 hands though, but there's no reason to get it all in here. Okay. Hope that helps. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to like explain this a bit further. This whole one at showdown thing and how it helps you correlate if this player's bluffing too much or bluffing too little. Next up is, I think this stat here is better than aggression factor. It's better than knowing their 3-bet range, 3-bet percentage. It's better than knowing their PFR percentage. It is the 1 when soft flop. Okay, so why is this important? The 1 when soft flop, this helps me answer a simple question, which is, does this player fight to win? Like, is this player playing to win? Okay? When a player has a 1 when soft flop, it's exactly what it means, how often they win when they see flop. It means that they are fighting when they see a flop. When they range and they put money in the middle, they are fighting. That means they have bluffs, they have value hands, they have everything in between. And that is a player I can play with. If a player never has bluffs, then yeah, you know how to play against them, but like, you can only win against them one way. But when a player has bluffs, you can win against them by bluff catching them, you can win against them by value betting them, and they just offer a lot of ways to win when they have a high one win soft flop. Okay? So, answer the question, does this player fight to win? Okay, if the answer is yes, then he has bluffs. If the answer is no, he has no bluffs. Okay, how do we know if the answer is yes or no? Well, we look at the percentage. If it's if it's 60% or greater, right? If it's 60% or greater, then this player is fighting for every single hand that he plays. If he connects in the slightest nuance, in the slightest way, he is putting money in the middle. He's trying to get you to fold. He's value betting, okay? And so we know this player has bluffs. And it helps on the river with bluff catching. If you get to the river, we have a marginal hand. We see this high number. We can bluff catch, assuming we get the proper pot odds and stuff. Now, if it's 45% to 60%, that means that this player is an average player, right? He's fighting for pots, right? And yeah, he's an average player fighting for pots, and he has bluffs and he has value. But when it's above 60%, that means that this player is fighting for everything. Now, what if it's 45%? Then the answer is no. 45% or less, the answer is no. That means that this player is not fighting for pots. He's very passive, and in correlation with the VPIP, you can discover if he's tight or passive or tight aggressive. If they're tight with the VPIP, but 60% one win soft flop, we know that he is tight aggressive. I'm gonna 3-bet this hand. Why? Because we're up against this whale, very low one in showdown, and he's very aggressive. The flop comes 6-9-8-2 two-tone, and we can start off with a bet here. As I said before, you know, sometimes this range cannot withstand multiple barrels. On this turn, we are gonna bet big again. We're gonna bet big. Hopefully, try to get him to fold. And as I said, 65% VPIP, barreling any 2 cards in position, he just cannot withstand the pressure. I like that. Now, what is the live example of one win soft flop? Well, this one's a bit tricky because as I said before, it's all about what cards they show up with on the river. Okay? We need to pay attention and see what cards are turning over. If they're turning over mandatory bluffs, we know that they are above the 45%. Okay? If they're turning over cards that don't make any sense at all, right? And they're just betting because someone checked them, we know that they're above the 60% mark. And it's really hard to like say if they're below the 60% and above the 45%, but if multiple times they've shown down hands that makes no sense to the bluff, it's not a missed draw, it's not a missed gut shot, it's just hands that completely whiff the board, which is good to make it the bluffs. But if they're doing this too often, then we know that they're over 60%. So it comes back to this same saying, pay attention to the showdown, and you know it'll help you make the right decisions. Okay, guys, and those are the 3 most important HUD stats when it comes to making the best decisions at the poker table, in my opinion, of course. So if you like what you see so far, please subscribe, and if I made you any money, please leave a comment and subscribe. And for the rest of the video, for like 10 more minutes, I'm gonna be playing some more poker and trying to properly utilize these stats in making profitable decisions. Okay. Play a little while longer and see if we can, you know, utilize this, what I've taught you. Let's get one more example at least. Jack 3 gonna fold. King 4. Let's see what we do with it. VPIP of 37. This guy is a aggro. High VPIP means he's loose. One of showdown is low, meaning he's bluffing. This is a aggro player, aggro fish, and that's what he is. That's why I labeled him as aggro fish. We're gonna raise the ace 8 suited here. And down below we raised the jack 7 suited. The flop came ace 7 deuce rainbow. Oh, we got pocket kings in the upper right-hand corner. Going to raise that up to 6 big blinds. And we're going to continue betting small for protection with the 7s here in the lower right-hand corner. But let's look at this pocket king's hand. Maybe we can get a nice example here. Let me take it down. Okay, the flop game's okay, but we're going to check our range here in this multi-way pot. Turn comes a deuce, and that just gives us the green light to put some money in the middle here. Oh, well, this player pots it. Now, high VPIP, low one a showdown. This player is capable of bluffing. Okay, high one was all flop. He's fighting for he's fighting on a lot of runouts. He could have a 7 here, but our kings are pretty much too strong to fold. We're gonna call. It's a multi-way pot. Let's see what he does. Now, we can call on most sizing here because of his high VPIP. Low one a showdown. This player is loose and aggressive. We're gonna give him the aggro fish. Now, when an aggro fish checks the river, when he fights so often, it's actually quite scary. And you're gonna think I'm nitty here, but I'm actually gonna check back the kings. Yeah, see what I'm saying? Like, now, that's how you utilize the stats here. Like, he's so loose and so aggressive that he is weaker when he barrels. So when he checks the river there, I cannot do anything but check back. And let me know if that makes sense to you. Yeah. Over here, I'm gonna call. We could probably sometimes win at showdown with the king high with some of the missed draws. We are gonna call here, and we're gonna fold the king queen. Gonna check this river with the 4-liner to the and we take it down. Here we go again. We have Mamba out 21, a aggro fish that is barreling into us. He is loose and aggressive. One at showdown is very low. That means he's capable of bluffing. And we're gonna call. He could be valuing a king here, and there is a king on the river. And as we said before, with a player like this being so aggressive, when they check, they're stronger than not. So we're gonna check, and we take it down. Nice. And we're gonna end the stream as soon as we stop getting good hands. We have ace king suited in the lower left hand corner. We're gonna raise it up here. Ace king offsuit in the lower right hand corner. We're gonna raise that one up. Oh my god, all these hands are not gonna open back to back to back. That's why I like playing multi-tabling. And king 9, we're gonna ISO here. With this flop, we are gonna bet small. We get a lot of folds on this flop. He calls. And this player being so tight, 23% VPIP. There be no draws here. He has ace high, but because his range is so strong, we're gonna check. He's very passive. This is leaning towards ace high. If he doesn't bet this river, we can turn our kings here into a bluff, and this player is tight enough to fold ace high. Nice. Okay. All right, guys. Looks like the good hands are stopping, and we're gonna conclude the video for now. If you enjoyed what you've seen so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. It was a pleasure sharing these tips with you. And if you want me to clarify anything else, leave a comment and we can make another video about it. In future videos, I'm gonna make a video on like all the tools I use to my HUD and all the tools I use at the poker table. And thanks for watching, guys. My name is Agrinia. Hope you enjoyed the show. Oh, the ace. You gotta play the ace, right? He calls. Turn is a 7. Counterfeiting a lot of the 7s here. He could have ace high. We are actually gonna jam here. And we take it down. Okay. Oh, come on, guys. Can I get it? Okay. We're gonna sit out here. No more good hands here. Sit out here, and hopefully we get a 10 here. Nope. I'm gonna check it back. Could have bluffed. No, not against this player. He's a calling station. And okay, nice. All right, peace out, guys.